Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Well, hello. Okay, now here I am, and I'm glad it's done. I've got that on, and just about missed the cues this morning. Running around, got all sorts of things going on, making the bus, taking care of various nonprofit houses of worship, etc., and a little discombobulated. But at least the levels are 5x5. Thanks, Justice, for keeping an eye on things and giving us the thumbs up that we need every morning in order to continue bringing you the show. To what end, I really don't know. I just opened up the Daily Kos front page to find the Daily Kos Elections Morning Digest headline staring me in the face. I knew this was coming too. Virginia Redistricting Commission collapses, punts work to state Supreme Court. I think as I mentioned, I've seen this coming for a while. I think we've made, pardon me. I think we've made some mention of this. It's really choking me up. I feel so terrible about this. But, yeah, I have seen this coming. This is why I voted against the Redistricting Commission. This was a terrible proposal. And it was really obvious, I don't know, to me anyway, that it was a terrible proposal. But it looked super fair. This is our Virginia moderate types not catching up with the times, essentially here. I imagine that this is all laid out in the narrative in the article. And if it isn't, then I misunderstand things. But my impression of how this was laid out, I was struck immediately by the fact that this was another one of those commissions made up of equal numbers of Republicans and Democrats. And so obviously that will be fair. But obviously, to me, that means it will be deadlocked. And the Republicans on the commission will simply vote to, either vote with an eye towards deadlock or simply not agree to anything that Democrats propose, no matter how fair and down the middle it is. And the plan was, well, if the commission can't settle on a redistricting plan, then, if it does deadlock, well, then it goes to the state Supreme Court. And they'll draw fair lines because they're fair and nonpartisan. But, of course, they're not. And as I understand it, the majority of them have been, were appointed by Republicans and are therefore conservative and Republican, period. I mean, it's supposed to be nonpartisan, but it's not. They rose to prominence through a party and were appointed to the bench because of their ties to that party. And they're not likely to honor the commitment to splitting things down the middle and being fair, whatever that means, that the designers, the pie-in-the-sky designers of the commission, had in mind. So here we are doing exactly what I was afraid we were going to be doing, and that's not real good. I actually was thinking, back when we spoke about this, redistricting commissions, it's not a new issue, and I know it's been proposed as a workaround in a lot of states. But, I've just seen too many of these things be proposed and deadlock, or the stupid super committee or whatever. Anytime that we feel like the fair position here is to give everyone equal representation, there's just no other outcome. It ends in deadlock, and I don't understand why people don't recognize this already. Just like the one in Colorado, right? When we spoke about that some months ago. Maybe it's more than a year ago when we were talking about it with the Irreverent Duo folks and listening to their pre-taped clip about it and insisting that, what was the way the Colorado scheme was proposed, and they were opposed to that too, was, that it wasn't so much the makeup of the commission as it was the mission of the commission, which rhymes. It's very nice and neat. And that the idea was to create competitive districts that had, if not equal numbers of Republicans and Democrats, but that was the aim to do, and that it had the effect of breaking up the, otherwise perfectly fair and naturally occurring blue islands around some of the urban areas and the biggest cities in Colorado. And you wanted that, so it ends up like slicing the city into like a pizza and putting some of the Democrats here with Republican ex-urban people and some of the Democrats there with some ex-urban Republicans from the other side of town, and diluting a very strong blue district into, 4 or 5 toss-ups. And that's not actually very helpful either. Why shouldn't there be some solidly blue districts in the area? There are some solidly red ones that you can't dilute with blue people because they're remote and in the outskirts of the remote parts of the state or the less populated part of the state. So there'll still be some solid red out there. Why can't there be? I mean, it's not that there can't be solid blue, but you get the idea. Redistricting is not that effing easy. And the idea that a tied commission is going to come up with a fair answer is fairly ridiculous, especially if they know that the backup is punting to a Supreme Court that is actually Republican and conservative, but everybody is going to cloak in the other robes of bipartisanship or nonpartisanship because of the nature of the job, even though it's not true anymore. Well, anyway, okay, that has me kind of mad. As you may know from hearing the rant this morning, the Kagro in the Morning radio show is live now. Thank you, Bill. How's it going up there in Maine? I see you're having some COVID problems these days. Not you, I hope, and not the squirrels either. Kagro X, that's me, reports that if you blinked between last night and this morning, you missed the rise and fall of the latest glorious pillar in the Trump empire. It happens. And it's true. I think at some point when I put the post up, I hadn't heard yet that Donald Trump had launched what I think is probably his 4th or 5th attempt at starting his own alternative social media platform, having been banned from Twitter and I think also from Facebook since the insurrection, which is as it should be, except minus the part where he gets executed for leading an insurrection, a failed insurrection against the United States. And it's not something that's particular to the United States. Just historically speaking, when you lead a failed insurrection against a government and that government prevails and stands, I don't know of any other situation where the leader of the insurrection has done so well financially and politically thereafter. Usually they're dead through one means or another. I don't know if I want to make any recommendations to you, but it's rare that you get another crack at it and then they say, come and run for president again. Although it does happen occasionally. Ayatollah Khomeini, as a matter of fact, managed to make a comeback and take over Iran. He did fairly well with that, although I don't know how much money he made doing it. That I'm unsure about. All right. Well, moving on. Let's see. Darwin. Hi, Darwin. Darwin commenting on this stuff this morning. I think I remember voting against this too. Simply because having any politician on the committee, redistricting committee, is by nature allowing elected officials to pseudo-choose their own electorate. Yeah, well, that's true too, and that's how you get the gerrymandering practice in state legislatures. And state legislatures very frequently, not only are they redrawing those districts for partisan advantage, they are often redrawing those districts for personal advantage. Bigwigs in the legislature will, with some regularity, carve out a district that includes their home that is also very heavily skewed toward their party, and then they go and occupy that district. So, these things happen as well. Let's see. I want to go back and take a look at how the Morning Digest guys covered the Virginia situation. That's their leadoff story here. Virginia's bipartisan redistricting commission has all but abandoned work on a new congressional map, likely punting the process to the state Supreme Court, just as it did with the state's legislative maps earlier this month. That is the state legislature's maps. So, by the way, who could have predicted that having punted to the Supreme Court on the state legislature, they would end up doing the same with the congressional map? Wow. While the panel still has until November 8th to finalize a map, the prospect looks remote after commissioners unanimously voted to adjourn indefinitely at a Wednesday meeting. That sounds like a good decision. Not. After the heated breakdown of the legislative redistricting process, acrimony on the commission crescendoed this week. Dun, 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 dun. That's more of a flourish than a crescendo. But I don't have the time for a crescendo. We have to build to that. When a Democratic member, Delegate Marcus Simon, revealed that the GOP's official redistricting arm had secretly drawn a map that former Republican Representative Tom Davis had proposed to the panel, a map that bore a very close resemblance to the plan that commissioners themselves had recently voted to advance. That seems kind of odd, don't you think? There's still no explanation as to why Democrats on the commission green-lighted that map, which was widely castigated as amounting to a Republican gerrymander even before Simon shined a spotlight on the GOP plan it shared so much DNA with. Those similarities were first called out by analyst Sam Shirazi, who brought the matter to Simon's attention. That conclusion was supported by the nonpartisan site PlanScore, which found the map would tilt toward Republicans despite the fact that Democrats have dominated Virginia for many years. That seems so odd. Why would that be? With the commission's abdication, responsibility for drawing new maps now falls to the state's highest court, pursuant to the same constitutional amendment that voters approved, without me, last year, creating the commission in the first place. While the court will still be bound by the same criteria commissioners were obligated to follow, quote-unquote obligated, I guess, including a ban on maps that intentionally and unfairly favor a particular party or candidate. Don't do that. Conservatives have a majority on the bench. The fact that one among many of that, the fact is one among many, that fact, I guess, that there are a majority on the bench, is one among many that some Virginia Democrats cited in opposing the amendment last year. Yeah, like me, although I wasn't terribly vocal about it. Though the justices are unlikely to draw any obvious gerrymanders, there are countless subtle ways they could craft maps that tilt toward the GOP, and most of the court's members, in fact, owe their jobs to such maps. Virginia is one of just 2 states, along with South Carolina, where Supreme Court justices are chosen by a majority vote of both houses of the legislature, both houses, and all of the conservatives on the court ascended to the bench thanks to Republican majorities secured through gerrymandered maps. It's almost as if they knew how they landed on the bench and were conscious of the political route they took to get there. And you know what? They probably are. So, okay, no surprise that we might see more of it, and, well, disappointing, to say the least. So we'll heave a heavy sigh and try and move on from there. Let's see. There is news. I didn't put aside news about the rise and fall of this new social media platform, though I did grab this tweet about it last night that seemed to tell the story all at once from Stephen Monticelli, or I don't know if he says Monticelli or not, but it's just the one C. Who is this? He is the publisher of Protean magazine, and a contributor at the Daily Beast, among some other places that you might otherwise recognize. He said it this way: it took less than 2 hours for Donald Trump's new social media to collapse under the weight of embarrassment. Now, this is a morning program and, not exactly family-oriented, but just a slight warning that, if you're eating breakfast or anything. Trump's own account was quickly compromised and proceeded to post a photo of, it's not a human doing anything terrible, but it's an animal doing something. This is what I'm just reading you the tweet. Put down the toast, put down the coffee, anything hot that you might spit out on somebody else. Trump's own account was quickly compromised and proceeded to post a photo of a pig defecating on its own scrotum. Good morning, everybody. How are you? I've seen the photo. It's there. Access to the site is now shut down. Steve, though, says, I'm not joking, and then posts the tweet from Claire Goforth, who has got a screen cap of it. So basically, yeah, the Donald J. Trump account there, which, they don't have verification badges of any kind, but I mean, he started the thing, so presumably they have some control over who's using on the first day an account labeled Donald J. Trump. And there's the picture. And poor pig. I don't think this would happen ordinarily, but this particular pig appears to be suffering from some swelling issues that makes this act possible. What can I tell you? Okay. I don't really know what that's about. There's also I don't know what they're calling it. What is a post on this new medium supposed to be called? But again, from the Donald J. Trump account, which presumably is part of the same effort to take over the account that the pig picture was. There's an FU message to FU Jack. It's at Jack, just like you might find on Twitter, where it's the founder of Twitter using the at Jack address. But I don't know whether they give him an account at this new platform so that they could yell at him. I really don't have any idea. Anyway, so somebody's posting these weird pictures and cursing up a storm, and they had to shut the place down. I did see some news this morning, though, that there's, I guess, some reason for concern about this, because it appears that the platform is backed with a considerable amount of money, which means that it isn't Trump backing the platform, because he hasn't got this kind of money. But he, I think, basically merged the operations of this, nascent Trump media organization with one of the leadership PACs, I think, as opposed to one of the super PACs, that will give him more leeway to spend that money, but money that he's raised from donors. And so, you're in serious danger of having this thing backed by a pool of money put together, in the dark money, in some cases, by sometimes anonymous donors. I guess if it's a leadership PAC, they have to actually, in fact, declare themselves. But even so, many of those actors not afraid to do so. All right. Well, let's see. Moving on here, I was expecting to see either notification from Greg that he wasn't able to make it today, or his raft of stories, but I'm gathering that perhaps there's some technical difficulties going on there, although maybe that he's wrapped in these stories as well. But I'm going to assume something's going on. Maybe Abby bit through the internet or something. And, well, wasn't really expecting that, but here we are. Okay, well, time then to turn to the rafto stories that I keep parked in Pocket and in the Twitter feed. There are many, and many directions to go in. The coronavirus news that caught my eye this morning, or rather last night, comes from a report in The Hill. I'm curious to see whether it's their own original reporting or whether it comes from somewhere else, but it's one of their special sections here, Changing America. Get this headline, and maybe this will change some minds about vaccines. Unvaccinated people should expect to catch COVID-19 every 16 months. I guess now that we have failed to take it out of circulation by vaccinating and making thereby or otherwise making immune, something like 80-90% of the population, we now may find this thing in seasonal circulation, endemic, I guess, right, rather than pandemic. And with that being the case, I guess if you are unvaccinated, whether you're vaccinated or not, now that we know we need some boosters, we're pretty clear that immunity, whether you acquire it by catching the disease and surviving it, or whether by vaccination, the immunity wanes over time. It's not one of those diseases that you catch once and then you're immune from it from the rest of your life. And so, I guess they've done the math, and by the time immunity wanes enough and you become susceptible again, that on average has been about 16 months for people. So I'm wondering whether that will motivate people who are on the bubble, if they, particularly those people who have gotten the disease, recovered from it, and said, well, it was bad, but it wasn't that bad, and I'm still glad I'm not vaccinated because I've heard, false rumors about how bad the vaccine is, and I don't want to have that, but I would rather not get COVID again. But thankfully I have natural immunity, as they like to call it. Well, now it turns out the natural immunity should do you good for all of about 16 months, and then the virus will come right back around and you'll get it again. Maybe it'll be less serious when you get it again, but then again, with 16 months in between you're contracting it, maybe it won't be regular coronavirus. Maybe it'll be Delta. Maybe it'll be the successor to Delta by the time you get it again. And we'll find out that with that strain, it isn't less serious the second time you get it. It's going to be, it's going to be a party. So I don't know what to tell you other than, I guess, in Greg's absence.
Oh my God, get the vaccine already, you fucks.
Yeah, that's still the advice. All right. Back on the Donald Trump story, Seth Chipman. Seth Chipman tweets to me that posts on this new network will be called Truths. And I think he's right. I think they called it I don't remember the name. Maybe you do, Seth. I'll find a story on it so we can get a real background on this thing. But, I think that he was trying to call it like the Truth Network or, something dumb like that. To wrap it, to brand himself as being the one telling the truth. I mean, it worked for Fox News, and no one's been able to get rid of them yet. So maybe that's really it. I'll grab this Yahoo News story on it. Or should I take Yahoo News or Washington Post? Let's do the Washington Post, because why not? We're in Washington. Trump still barred from Twitter and Facebook to launch social network in, quote, fight back against big tech. That's good framing for him, too, by the way. That's actually quite masterful, right? It's not so much that I am fighting, whatever it is, censorship or fake news or whatever, but I'm fighting against big tech, which is actually something that a lot of people can actually kind of get behind. I'm going to fight against Twitter and Facebook by undermining them and stealing their market from them. Who wrote this? Brian Peach? How does he pronounce this? Pietch. Peach sounds nice. We'll give him that. Banished from Twitter and Facebook, former President Donald Trump is setting out again, because as I recall, he's tried this like 5 times. And wasn't one of them the one thing he said, I'm going to launch my own new social media platform, and the social media platform turned out to be like a blog. And then he was basically like putting his press releases on a blog, and then people were taking pictures of it and circulating them on Twitter as photos. But this still feels like, I think also like Gab and Parler and the other imitators have all been, if not under his direct control, they were all launched as alternatives that would give him the opportunity to speak out on social media. And I don't think anybody has banned him from those platforms. They're still available. That's just they suck and no one's on them. So it's like literally, shouting into the void. So he's going to start a new void is what's happening. Banished from Twitter and Facebook, right? He set out to create a platform where he can communicate easily with his base and the rest of the world. It's the rest of the world that's got him pissed off. Trump announced late Wednesday that his company, Trump Media and Technology Group, there's no group, it's just, him and the money, I guess, would be launching a new social media platform called Truth Social, and that's why, you see. The media company and platform were created, Trump said in a statement, to stand up to the tyranny of big tech, although I'm sure he didn't actually write it, so his version of it is stand up very strongly, 2 weeks, something, China. And so we don't really know what he means. What's attributed to him is the quote that says, "We live in a world where the Taliban has a huge presence on Twitter, yet your favorite American president has been silenced." Yes, by death. Which, would be a fantastic way to silence yourself, sir. But you're not my favorite American president. I don't know if I have one, but if I do, he's probably dead. Anyway, this is unacceptable. Woohoo. So he didn't accept it, and then somebody hacked his account and put pig pooping pictures on there. And that's where we are in America. And whatever, let's have an election. That's the whole story. We live in a world where the Taliban has a huge presence, yada, yada. The site was briefly accessible to the public on Wednesday night. Were you excited about that? Allowing people to create accounts and claim usernames. One account under the handle Donald J. Trump posted a photo of a pig defecating. Well, that would be fantastic. So maybe it wasn't that, as we heard in the initial tweet. I mean, that must have been a spur of the moment thing. I just saw this, and so I'll report it. They just assumed that the username Donald J. Trump went to Donald J. Trump on his own social media site. So either way, whether his account was hacked right away because they don't know how to build, security, or whether his site was essentially not, wasn't hacked per se, but was hacked at by people, looking to make trouble. The fact that the Donald J. Trump username was available on the social media platform that Donald J. Trump supposedly had built for himself is a pretty major oversight too. So anyway, site was briefly accessible. Then there was this thing that happened, and people posted the pictures and following. Well, actually, never mind that, because the rest of the story picks up with the rest of a different narrative. We'll return to it after this short break, but I guess only stayed up a couple of minutes before they realized they had lost control of it. If only his presidency had gone the same.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Networks Radio. I'm pleased to be able to report that Greg and family are okay. There's just a household emergency, some sort of appliance or something that's causing enough of the disruption that we'll have to miss out. And, okay, so he'll be back on Monday, but everybody's healthy and okay, and Abby's okay, and she's not fighting with the sanitation engineers or anything like that. Just one of those things, and when water leaks, you got to take care of it, and that's all there is to it. So, sorry to hear about that, but at least it's not a health issue, and we're pleased to be able to tell anybody who's worried about that can relax. But if you have a mop and a bucket and live in Connecticut, you're needed. All right, so let's see. Let me return to the Washington Post narrative of Trump's new social media network, just so we understand it. What else? What other background information? What detour did they want to take? Other than, really, is there news other than the pig picture? Honestly, we'll find out. Following the January 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol, Facebook and Twitter booted Trump from their platforms. That's the modern equivalent of I guess, executing the leader of a failed coup. You're banned from social media. Conservatives, including many in Congress, have long charged with little substantiation that popular social networks are biased against them. It's just that, people hate criminals. So, what can you do? After he lost his online platform this spring, Trump launched a blog called, quote, "From the Desk of Donald Trump." That's what we've been seeing the pictures of, I think. But as the Washington Post and others reported, the site had low readership. It sucked. It was stupid. The blog shuttered after 29 days amid reports that Trump was upset by media coverage about its small audience. Yes. I just wanted to let that pause hang out there for just a minute. Trump has been planning the launch of a platform like Truth Social for months. In fact, well, I would say he's announced the launch several times over those months, and it's been a different thing, a different. He just keeps doing it. Every time some charlatan comes to him and says, "I've built one, will you put your name on it?" And who knows whether they also offer him money of some sorts in order to boost the profile of this new launch. And they've all fallen apart. Or, Gab and Parler and others have said that they were, if not specifically built to give Trump a place to speak out, they were all built to give right-wing figures who find themselves getting banned from regular social media all the time a place to speak. And therefore a place where his base might be gathered for him to speak to them. But for whatever reason, it just never works out. It's weird. All right, so they say Trump has been planning a launch of a platform like this for months. His advisors previously told the Post that the former president feared the blog's underwhelming launch could cast doubt on the social media platform he wanted to create. It does. I doubt it right now. As a direct result of the failure of the blog, although also as a direct result of the decision to launch a blog, which, was just stupid, generally. All right, let's see. Trump's political rise was built off his large Twitter following, and his presidency was marked by his frequent use of Twitter to bash critics and announce policy changes. Trump's tweets were so widely watched. How widely watched were they? They were so widely watched that an apparent typo, Covfefe, remember that one, became a meme. All right, we can give him that. Trump Media and Technology Group also announced that it intends to launch a streaming service that features non-woke entertainment programming, news, podcasts, and more. So, nothing new. It's the same as everything else. The new Trump company said it was merging with NASDAQ-listed Digital World Acquisition Corporation, which, hopefully that's Digital World Acquisition Corp, not Digital World Acquisition Corp, but knowing these guys, it's probably the latter. A blank check company created to buy another business. Okay, might as well keep track of the vehicles here. The merger valued Trump Media and Technology Group, which will be listed on the stock exchange. Let's tank that. At an initial enterprise value of $875 million, the statement said. So where are my GameStop people who can manipulate stock price using social media? This is an obvious target. This month, Trump filed a lawsuit asking a federal court to force Twitter to reinstate his account. That is amazing. The suit alleged that Twitter was, quote, censoring Trump, adding that the platform, quote, exercises a degree of power and control over political discourse in this country that is immeasurably, historically unprecedented, and profoundly dangerous to open democratic debate, which is very interesting because that doesn't help his case, reminding everybody how profoundly dangerous to open democratic debate social media is when it includes Donald Trump or his supporters. And of course, it's awfully difficult for, I would think, to convince an actual fair judge that there's any problem with keeping Trump off of Twitter when it's quite obvious that he still, whether or not he really actually has the money he claims to have, he's still in a position by virtue of his having been allegedly president of the United States to be able to snap his fingers and bring a new social media platform into being and to brand it with his own image. And, in what sense is he being censored? It's just that, look, people liked Twitter. They liked it before he was there. They may or may not have been entertained by him while he was there. but he's gone now and they don't care. And they're having a good time talking to their other friends and neighbors with or without him. And it doesn't make a difference one way or the other. And he can always just start his own thing, which he does. So what's the harm here? There's nothing. So, I don't know. I mean, obviously a doomed suit, but who knows? If it gets in front of a Trump judge, maybe it goes another direction. Oh, that gives me something to segue to. You know what? If I leave it for later, I won't do it. I mean, maybe I can open the tweet I was thinking of that will lead me to that story if I can see it open later on. Where was this one? There it is. But speaking of Trump judges, there's a story involved there. Oh no, now that tweet doesn't exist. That sucks. I wonder if it got deleted and retweeted by the same person later on. But, I might as well just spit it out now. Speaking of Trump judges and the possibility of getting his lawsuit against Twitter in front of one of the Trump judges, apparently, you know how he was in the habit, as Republicans are, of nominating extremely young people to the bench in the hopes that they would, with their lifetime appointment, be sitting on the bench to rule in favor of Donald Trump and his preferred Republicans for 40, 50 years to come. Some backfire, allegedly, because now the tweet has been deleted. I'll have to figure out whether the substance of the tweet is reposted anywhere. But the rumor, I guess we can say, was that one out of the dozens, hundreds of judges put on the bench by Donald Trump, one of these young opportunists was apparently just as opportunistic and transactional as Donald Trump, and took an appointment to the bench in his early to mid 30s with the idea in mind that he would serve some 50 years on the bench, like we said. But instead, he, and it looked like it might be becoming a trend among some of the younger appointees, served a year, or actually like just under a year on the bench, and then said, I could quit the bench, which kind of sucks anyway, and where the pay is relatively low, and trade on the prestige of having been a sitting federal judge and get a sweet partnership deal at a big law firm somewhere and cash in and make hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe even millions of dollars for the next 50 years instead of sitting here at the $180,000 or whatever it is salary level for a federal judge and enjoying the prestige. Why don't I cash in on it? So I thought that was a pretty amazing story. And it was like, wow, I wonder how many of them there are who would do that. And could we encourage that and clear them off the bench and let us put our people on the bench instead? What an interesting thing that would be if it turns out that the weakness of Trump judicial nominations was that they are just as greedy and transactional, if not more so, than Donald Trump is. And I wonder whether he would consider that a betrayal or not. It's an interesting possibility. All right, let's see if it was a tweet from an account called The Vetting Room. Well, actually, on Twitter, just Vetting Room without the V in it. But Vetting Room, news, analysis, and commentary on judicial nominees. So let's see. Did they go back and... yeah, I think. All right, well, here's another tweet that says, finally, an explanation. Okay. All right. Yeah, I see what's going on here. All right. Well, I guess it didn't happen is the bottom line of it. That's too bad. The explanation is that somebody did not read the story closely enough. It was, here is included the tweet of one Sean Murata, a partner with Hogan Lovells Appellate and Supreme Court Group, who brings the clarity here, and includes the newspaper clip that I guess the original erroneous report was based on. For a few moments on Wednesday, court observers were abuzz over the apparent and unusual retirement of a Trump-era appointee to the U.S. Court of Federal Claims after less than a year on the bench. Stephen Schwartz, however, and I don't know whether he was one of the like really dubious judges or whatever that that was brought to our attention along the way. But anyway, it doesn't matter because he's not retiring. What happened here? That declaration comes from his Washington, D.C. based chambers and from the Administrative Office of the U.S. Courts, which said its website that posts future judicial vacancies, and that's, I guess, the heart of the mistake here, showed Schwartz would leave the bench on November 1st. A spokesman for the Administrative Office told Reuters that Schwartz, quote, recently sent a notification saying he was electing a certain retirement plan effective on November 1st. And, well, I don't know. Let's see. I guess, he has to send it to the administrative office, but I guess whether it got misdirected or what, I don't know. But I guess the U.S. courts, the administrative office of the U.S. courts maintains the website that posted the news, the mistaken news, that Schwartz was retiring. So, that's a trustworthy enough source. It's just an interesting meta story about media. If the administrative office of the U.S. courts posts it, you're justified in assuming that it's actually correct. But people do make mistakes, and that's one of them. So yeah, as Sean Murata points out, electing retirement and electing a retirement plan are not quite the same thing. So that was the big mistake. Well, that's good. We didn't give ourselves time to get too excited over it. But, for a minute there, I guess, trying to figure out what would motivate somebody to retire from the bench after just under a year. One of the reasons you might retire from the bench is that you're on the Court of Federal Claims as opposed to, one of the real courts. I'm sure you'd rather be elsewhere. But it did strike me as the sort of thing that Trump appointees might actually elect to do, like to realize, why would I sit here making $180,000 when I can cash in? Although with less than a year of experience, maybe the cashing in part isn't quite as lucrative as they'd hoped. So but it's entirely possible that after 5 years, 10 years on the bench, it'd be fine if they retired on the early side as far as I'm concerned, so long as there's a Democratic president. Not that a Democratic president is ever going to be able to nominate judges again, because we'll never get something, blah, blah, blah. It's not supposed to be subject to the filibuster. But somewhere along the line, Republicans will take over the Senate and say, well, when Democrats nominate them, it requires 60 votes. And we'll say, well, we really want to have a bipartisan compromise about that. So we'll get to work on it at some point. I don't know. Anyway, just being pessimistic. Overly pessimistic and without justification. But anyway, I just wanted to spit that news out. So that means we lost our track on the news of Trump launching the new social media platform. Is there anything else that's super interesting in this? I don't know. But the good news is we were almost done with the article when we jumped tracks anyhow. So we can go back without losing too much. So where were we? Trump filed a lawsuit asking a federal court to force Twitter to reinstate him. There have been other social networks created to attract conservative users, but they have not gained the traction that more mainstream platforms have, because it's horrible and disgusting, and you can barely stand to be there. I forgot about the third one, was Getter. Remember that one? Gettr. Jason Miller, the deadbeat dad and abortion pill enthusiast, who was a former advisor to Trump, and I guess in reality still is. He launched Getter, which describes itself as a, quote, free speech social media platform, but it also sucks, so Trump isn't there, or doesn't care about being there, because there's no one there to talk to, except his supporters, which is amazing, but okay. Miller said in a statement, "Congratulations to President Trump for re-entering the social media fray. Now Facebook and Twitter will lose even more market share," except they really aren't losing anything. The platform Parler became briefly popular after Trump was booted from Facebook and Twitter, but the network went dark for weeks after Amazon pulled its cloud support for it over concerns that it was not doing enough to moderate incitements to violence. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, by the way, owns the Washington Post. They have to remind you of that, I guess. I'm excited to begin sharing my thoughts on Truth, this time with all caps, Truth Social, and to fight back against big tech, Trump said. Everyone's asking, everyone always asks me, why doesn't someone stand up to big tech? Well, we will be soon. So, all right, soon, very soon, 2 weeks, we'll take over the airports. We'll do whatever we have to do. The network is set to launch in beta form in November and will be available in full, allegedly, next year, 2 weeks. A release date for the streaming service was not provided because they don't actually know what that is. That's my basic guess on that stuff. So there you go. Now we know the news. Now we know why people are talking about pigs defecating, which, may or may not be their normal mode of conversation anyway, but now they have extra incentive to do it. All right, speaking of Trump and the courts and other stuff like that, we'll go on to this story. I have seen it circulating for a couple of days. It didn't make it to the show, but Republican Congressman Jeff Fortenberry apparently indicted, I think, for lying to the FBI, which is something Republicans are doing with some fair regularity now. Matt Gaetz was complaining on Twitter yesterday. I'll see if I can find it for you. That, anyway, that Fortenberry, he believes Fortenberry, and he probably wasn't lying to the FBI, and it doesn't matter anyway, because I thought this was an extraordinarily dangerous thing to say, but par for the course for Gaetz, saying that the FBI is the Democratic Party's enforcement wing, because there's such close ties historically between the FBI and Democratic politicians. Yeah, here he is saying that the FBI is the enforcement wing of the Democratic Party. Never mind, of course, that the Republican Party is the international operations wing of Putin's United Russia Party. But, you can't be expecting Gaetz to admit to that. I had to take care of that for him. And by the way, in digging through my own tweet stream, to find that, I also happened upon my notice to the rest of you that in gathering up last night's COVID numbers, the United States yesterday passed 750,000 dead of COVID in this country, according to the Worldometer's numbers. The New York Times and Johns Hopkins numbers are typically a couple of days behind this, but very shortly, and well after the fact, they'll also be announcing that 750,000 Americans have died. And of course, if you look closer at excess deaths, and that helps you get around the gamesmanship in some states where they're very reluctant. Anything that they can do to avoid reporting someone as having died from COVID, they do. But the number was months ago, I think, already estimated to be in the 900,000. So we're almost assuredly well over 1 million by now, going by excess deaths. And just to remind you of the scale of the problem, just straight up looking at the COVID numbers on Worldometers and taking the number of people who have been reported to Worldometers, through the various reporting mechanisms, as having died of COVID, and dividing it by the number of people reported, again, through the various mechanisms of having contracted COVID, COVID's still running about a 1.6% rate of death in this country. Just over 1.6% of people who have contracted. I mean, I'm sure that the number of positives, I guess by now, the number of positives we're reporting and reading about in Worldometers include some people who have gotten it twice, but I don't think that's a majority of people. But anyway, 1.6% of those who contract it end up dying from it. And so just, pointing out the numbers again. Yesterday alone, they were reporting, I'll scroll through my own numbers here. In the United States, we logged 79,123 people reported yesterday as having contracted the virus. And I'm sure they, contracted it at some point in the last, 5 to 7 days and got a test, and the test came back positive. So then they reported it the next day. So it's not that necessarily that 79,000 people that we know with precision contracted the virus yesterday or anything like that. But of the 79,442 new cases reported yesterday, take 1.6% of that, and 1,295 more people are basically scheduled for death in the coming weeks. If numbers improve, fine, but it's still going to be 1,000 of the people that we talked about yesterday as new cases are going to be dead. If there's any accuracy at all to the numbers for active cases of COVID, and I have my doubts about how accurate that number is and how it's even calculated. But if there were any accuracy to it, I guess you could alarm yourself by doing the same math here and saying, let's see, in the United States, the list has 9,526,772 active cases, whatever that might mean. If that were a correct number at 1.6%, there are 152,428 deaths in the pipeline if everybody stops contracting COVID now. So what are we at? 751,000, about to go over to 752,000. So we'll just add that as a round number. 904,428. So creeping dangerously close already to 1 million dead if we stop COVID dead in its tracks right now and just let all the active cases play out. But again, I will say, the active case numbers are highly suspect, though it may very well be the case that it comes out in the wash and there are 9.5 million active cases out there, given that, we're contracting cases still at, 100,000 or so a day. And this stuff lasts a long time. So, anyway, throwing that one out there just for fun and laughs this morning. Sheesh. Let's see. Back in pocket. Yes. I was going to go over to the Fortenberry story. Somehow I got distracted because I was talking about Matt Gaetz, and that was next to a tweet about the numbers. Fortenberry. I didn't read his story, but we'll jump to this. We'll jump ahead in the timeline to Donald Trump saying, this is terrible, they're persecuting him because he's Republican, blah, 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 kind of stuff, as you knew he would have to do eventually. The headline I'm reading is from Salon, and it reads this way. It's a quote from Trump. Is there no justice? There really isn't, because, of course, Trump's not been hanged. Not yet at all. As far as I know, nobody has even measured his neck. So, no, not much anyway. Not much justice. But that's Trump complaining that a GOP ally, was indicted for, quote, telling some lies to the FBI. And he minimizes it that way. What's the big deal? He told some lies to the FBI. Everybody lies. I mean, that's his basic excuse here. The subheader, Representative Jeff Fortenberry says he is the, quote, victim of illegal campaign donations from a billionaire who funded Republicans. He's the big victim here. There was this other foreign billionaire, not the Russian one or ones, not the Chinese one or ones, not the fake Chinese one or ones that turned out to be BBC reporters, but yet a third source. And, there are probably dozens from dozens of countries who've done the same. But it's an interesting spin, right? They give money to Republicans in the hopes of influencing them and controlling them as politicians. And then when the politicians are caught, they say, I'm the victim of an illegal scheme to give me money. If only we could all be such victims. So that's the story with him. The story came to a lot of people's attention probably in the last day or two. There's been some reporting about it. I just didn't pick up on it because, Jeff Fortenberry. All right, run-of-the-mill Republican controversy and, criminal activity. I mean, it is. We should have noted it. But Fortenberry, right? It's not a big name or anything. But it was indicative. I did think it deserved mention because just as we've been talking about how many foreign sources of cash the Republicans have been tapping into lately and how serious this is. But then most people noticed the story when he tried to preempt the story by making a video of himself, in the modern style, in his pickup truck. But because he's a politician, so he's in a pickup truck with his wife and a dog. It's his dog. I mean, I think. I don't know. He may have rented the dog. That's possible. We've seen that done before. But, so the only way they could have been more American is if they had, smashed apple pies in each other's faces as well. I don't think there was room in the truck for a baseball game, but that's what they did. And he preemptively came out and said, well, you're going to hear a whole thing about all these lies, and they're going to be saying I'm a liar. But I'm not a liar. I'm not lying to you now about lying about taking the money. I didn't do that. I didn't know where the money came from. Sure, whatever. Lots of people love to give bribes anonymously and just say, I just want you to do the right thing for, well, I guess not for America, but for my country, where I come from. Happens all the time. Anyway, this is the update on the story from Salon that I told you about. The Justice Department on Tuesday charged Representative Jeff Fortenberry, a Republican of Nebraska, with lying to the FBI in a campaign finance investigation. Fortenberry was charged with 2 counts of making false statements and 1 count of falsifying and concealing material facts. Federal prosecutors have accused him of twice lying to the FBI about whether he was aware that he had received tens of thousands of dollars, it doesn't say, but that's probably what he got, in campaign contributions from a foreign billionaire. It was tens of thousands of something. We hope it was dollars. That would be the only thing that would be helpful to him. Under House Republican rules, he will have to step down. How do you like that? Step down from his position as the top Republican on the House Appropriations Agriculture Subcommittee. Not the whole committee, but the subcommittee, according to the Washington Post. The indictment came hours after Fortenberry posted a video online predicting he would be indicted. That's a good prediction. When the FBI calls you and says, you're going to be indicted later this afternoon, not much of a prediction. But okay, Fortenberry said the FBI agents came to his home 2 years earlier to question him about illegal foreign donations. We'll find out more about that situation after this. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We'll continue on with the reading of the Salon update article on where we are with Fortenberry, since we've moved on in the timeline. So this is a quote from his video in which he says, I let them in my house. I answered their questions. I mean, you kind of have to. You don't initially have to unless they have a warrant, of course. But, if you're a sitting congressman, it's a difficult thing to, turn away the FBI. And, of course, it just makes people more suspicious and rarely works out for you in adjudicating your case. But, okay, I let them in my house. I answered their questions. I mean, I don't recommend that, by the way. Whether you're a sitting congressman or not, if investigators, police, FBI, whatever, come to your house and they want to ask questions, there's a strong temptation, I guess, to think, well, if I haven't done anything wrong, whether you believe that about yourself or not, a strong temptation to say, well, I'll answer their questions just so that they know that I don't think they have anything to suspect me of. But don't. That's not legal advice. I can't offer you legal advice. But just generally speaking, when they say to you, when they arrest you, and they tell you that anything you say can and you will be used against you, in a court of law, they don't have to be arresting you to use the statements that you may make when they ask you questions. They can use that against you in a court of law too. It's not that everything from here forward can and will be used against you in a court of law, but anything you say to them, generally speaking, and they're quite used to people saying, I want a lawyer. They'll roll their eyes. They'll say that that's not the way it works. They'll say, we're just trying to help you here. We know you didn't do it. We're just trying to help you clear your name. That'd be great, but they're really not doing that. But okay. So I would just recommend, as uncomfortable as it is, just saying, you know what? I'm not saying anything without a lawyer present, like one of mine, not just like, I'm a lawyer. Oh, okay. Well, then I'll spill it. Right. Because very often these FBI agents will be able to say that. Anyway, An indictment came hours after Fortenberry posted this video. He says, they came to my home 2 years ago. I let them in my house, answered their questions. Later, we went back and answered further questions. 2 mistakes. I told them what I knew and what I understood. They have accused me of lying to them and are charging me with this, he said in a video filmed in a pickup truck with his wife and his dog. Very all-American, including the part about lying to the FBI and then lying about having lied to the FBI. And I guess here the plan was, I'll talk to them without my lawyer present for 2 reasons. One, if my lawyer is present and I start lying to them, my lawyer will go crazy. Or, keel over and die, or try to intervene in some way and make it obvious that I am lying. And 2, I'm so smart. Look at me. I'm a member of Congress. I got here not because I'm a dummy. I can handle a couple of stupid FBI agents. All I have to do is lie to them. They're going to ask me, did you know that the guy who gave you the money was a foreigner and was trying to control you? What? No. It feels like an easy lie to tell. And if you think they can't prove that the opposite is true, then you probably think, I could probably get away with this. They really don't know whether I knew. And that's why they're here to ask me. And if I tell them I didn't know, then they're not going to have any other facts that establish that I did know, right? But again, in giving you the advice, if the FBI or the cops show up at your house, in all likelihood, they didn't just knock on your door randomly. They're there because they do have other evidence that points to the likelihood that you did know about the nature of that money or whatever the hell the crime is that they're asking you about. That's why they're there. They're there to get confirmation of the fact. If you give it to them, awesome. Case not closed or anything, but, case on. The prosecution is on. We have something here. What did you get? Well, we got his denial. Well, that's not anything. No, it's not, but it is a basis to charge him with lying to the FBI because we knew when we went there that he knew what the origin of that money is. We were just looking to see whether he was going to give us a lying to the FBI charge for free or cop to the crime and let us move directly to sentencing on that. They didn't come to find out, I don't know, you got some money. It might have been on the up and up, maybe not. What do you think? That wasn't the question. What gets FBI agents dispatched to a congressman's home in Nebraska? It's strong evidence that something's gone wrong there. Anyway, just don't do it. Don't talk to them without your lawyer. He'll tell you the same thing. She'll tell you the same thing. They'll tell you the same thing. Yeah, I think I covered all the bases there. All right. Well, anyway, sorry about that. Where were we? Yes, right. So former President Donald Trump inserts himself into the story, of course, because there was a story. So he's like, I'm part of this. Former President Donald Trump jumped to his Republican allies' defense after the indictment. Isn't it terrible that a Republican congressman from Nebraska just got indicted? It would be better if he were from Maine or something like that. But he's from Nebraska. I like Nebraska. It's beautiful, beautiful state. I love it. It's terrific. A lot of happy people there, supporters of mine. They voted for me, in the last election. Twice. Both elections. I won Nebraska, of course. I actually won the whole thing. Very few people know that. Anyway, isn't it terrible that a Republican congressman from anywhere was indicted? Why aren't there Democrats being indicted? And that's actually where he goes with this statement. So he just got indicted for possibly telling some lies to investigators about campaign contributions. I mean, everybody lies about that, right? He goes on to say, when half the United States Congress lies about made-up scams, he said in his statement, complaining that his political foes were not being charged for lying about his ties to Russia. That's what he's talking about. How can they charge this Fortenberry guy with lying to investigators? They're not charging Adam Schiff, little Adam Schiff, with lying to the American people about Russia. Well, he wasn't lying. I mean, that's one of the reasons they're not charging him with that. Whereas they're pretty sure Fortenberry lied because, well, we'll go on with the article. Is there no justice in our country? He questioned. And again, this was a written statement, so it comes with his capitalization. Country is capitalized. Just, by the way, I don't know. I mean, I guess this habit was formed long before he got there, but University of Pennsylvania, shame on you. How could you let this man graduate without teaching him punctuation, capitalization, etc.? Fortenberry's indictment stems from an FBI investigation into, all right, ready for the other countries that we're talking about? Lebanese-Nigerian billionaire, okay? Lebanese-Nigerian billionaire. And the name is, because we speak English, we would say Gilbert Chagori. Maybe if you were, French, say? You would say maybe Gilbert, perhaps. I don't know. Maybe if it had an accent mark of some kind, I would say okay. But maybe they would say Gilbert Chagoury. I don't know. Chagoury. I'm not Lebanese. I'm not Nigerian. I'm not French. Nothing. I have nothing going for me in pronouncing this. Gilbert Chagoury, we'll say, because America, who admitted earlier this year, this guy did, that he donated $180,000 to 4 candidates between 2012 and 2016 using intermediaries such as Washington lobbyist Tufik, Tufik, Joseph Baclini, Baaklini, Tufik Baclini. No idea. Well, that's the guy he used to conceal his contributions. But by the way, I mean, he might be a nice guy. Maybe he specializes in this. Not very well, because Fortenberry's indicted now. But if you are, more free legal advice, if you're looking to launder foreign money into American elections, I can't give you any advice on doing that. Don't do it. And do turn yourself into the FBI. And go ahead, by all means, talk to them without your lawyer present. But I guess I'll comment on this. If you were looking to launder money into the race, well, I know it's illegal for foreign actors to contribute to American politicians and political race candidates and the races they're running in. So we're going to use a straw donor who's American to hide the fact that this is happening. You want Washington lobbyist John Smith, right? Okay. You don't want Washington lobbyist or janitor or anything, Tufik Baclini, doing it. Not because he's not a good lobbyist. Maybe he's great, although he seems to be a bit of a dirty dog here. But maybe a good guy, maybe even a great lobbyist. But you want John Smith because when you're looking down the records, one, Tufik Baclini jumps out and say, "Is that guy American?" I mean, that's prejudice. You're being a bigot and a xenophobe for doing this. But I give you permission to think to yourself, I'll check in on this guy. Okay, well, but yeah, he is American, so no problem, right? But then you notice he's giving a lot of money to a lot of people, and I don't know that he has that much available. He is a Washington lobbyist. We could expect him to be giving an awful lot of money to people, but he's got a very weird donation pattern. Now, a lot of people have a donation pattern that would look weird on further scrutiny. Almost anybody, and Washington lobbyists in particular. I mean, basically all lobbyists will tell on themselves by disclosing they have to disclose who they give their money to. But I mean, the first thing you should be thinking about when a Washington lobbyist gives money is this an influence buying scheme? Because that's the job that they're in. But okay, the point here is that Joe Smith doesn't draw any scrutiny, not just because of xenophobia, but because also, you probably don't, well, maybe because the name Joe Smith is so comically generic, you might notice. But otherwise, you might, be looking over things and you're just looking at the numbers or where the money went to first, because you can't have eyes on everything at the same time. And you might miss a pattern, but you won't miss a pattern that includes the name Tufik Joseph Baclini, right? You'll say, another one, all from this Baclini guy whose name jumps out at me. you are giving yourself away. What can I tell you? So, I mean, I guess if you're in the business of being a straw man for billionaires and your name is Tufich Baaklini, congratulations to you. By all means, more power to you and recognizing your heritage and never give that up. But maybe you want to be doing business as the, K Street Consulting Group or something like that. Or change your name legally, but tell your friends, my friends call me Tufich Joseph Baaklini, but you can call me, Brigham Young. Like, pick a good, don't pick one that'll give you away. Bobson Dugnut. Nothing like that. But think about changing that. Is all I can say. I don't want to give advice to people, but for illegal activity. But man, I hate people who are just lazy and stupid. And I'm sure this guy's not. I'm just like, look at me. I'm so concerned about insulting a criminal. But that's just the kind of guy I am. I'm just that nice when it comes. I'm pounding on the desk to emphasize how nice I am about these things. You shouldn't be doing this. And I don't know. I like my crime clever and smart. It's exciting to unravel a clever and innovative scheme. It sucks when you get away with it, and all that. And if the more clever and innovative it is, the better chances are that you will get away with it. But when we bust you, it's so much more satisfying to figure out how you came to the realization that you thought you could get away with it. How you thought you could get away with this is just dumb. You couldn't. We didn't. I'm looking at you right now. All right. The rest of the story. Prosecutors said that Chagouri, the Lebanese-Nigerian billionaire whose funds were being laundered by Baaklini, right? An actual Nigerian prince here giving you money. That should be another red flag. A Nigerian billionaire wants to give you money. Click here. Don't click, man. You're in trouble. Prosecutors said that Chagouri had selected politicians from less populous states because the contribution would be more noticeable. Noticeable, that's the problem. But he wants more noticeable to the politician and thereby would promote increased donor access. So not only is he laundering money to try to influence American politicians, but he's purposely picking people like Fortenberry who aren't raking in the donations, even though he's a ranking member of a appropriations subcommittee. He should be doing better. But picking somebody from like less populated states so that there's just not as big a fundraising base, so that when you come in with your $10,000 and your Tufich Baaklini name, you're noticed, which is also how you get arrested. Anyway, Fortenberry, who has served in Congress since 2005, said he was unaware at the time that he was one of the candidates. And that part could be true. I was unaware how many other candidates Chagouri was giving money to. But anyway, 5.5 years ago, a person from overseas illegally moved money to my campaign, he said in the video. I didn't know anything about this. Prosecutors say Fortenberry lied when he was questioned about the donations. The DOJ says one of the congressman's fundraisers informed him in 2018 that he funneled $30,000 donated by Baaklini to a campaign event, and that the cash, quote, probably did come from Gilbert Chagouri. Which, I don't know, maybe that didn't mean anything to Fortenberry, and there's more evidence that we would need to be able to conclude that saying something like that would or should have rung a bell with Fortenberry, other than that's a weird sounding name for a Nebraskan. Oh, well, he's not one. He's a Lebanese-Nigerian billionaire. Ah. And Baaklini? Well, we don't know, but it's obviously foreign sounding. So there you go. The indictment says the unnamed fundraiser, who is identified only as Individual H, was cooperating with investigators when he discussed the donation with Fortenberry. And I don't know whether Individual H has anything, I don't know whether that's like one of his initials, H, or whether he's just the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, what is that, eighth Yeah, eighth letter. I counted. I was counting on my fingers, and I skipped the finger for some reason. I skipped the middle finger for savings. I wanted to save it to give it to Fortenberry at the end. I should have been able to do that in my head anyway. J's number 10. I know that from Battleship, by the way. So, educational, as well as fun and entertaining for ages 8 and up. I don't know. Can you play younger? I think so. Anyway, mature themes. It's a war. Perhaps you don't want to. Shiguri admitted the donations in 2019, and charges against him were dropped after he agreed to cooperate with investigators and pay $1.8 million in fines. Baclini also admitted to funneling Shiguri's money and agreed to pay a $90,000 fine. There's our FEC at work. But I guess they agreed on something at some point, or maybe they just went direct to the DOJ and they said, well, we'll nail him, even if the FEC won't do anything. But fine, I don't know. I guess we could read, there's a link to the agreement to cooperate. We could read the agreement and who was charging them. Oh, I forgot about completing the thought about individual H. It was, maybe individual H was just the 8th identity that got hidden in that case. And the next person was individual I, the 9th. Anyway, despite learning of the potentially illegal donation, prosecutors say Fortenberry failed to file an amended report to the FEC and did not return the money until he was questioned by investigators in 2019. Fortenberry told agents at the time that all donors to the event were disclosed to the FEC and that he did not know of any foreign contributions, according to the court filing. But as we learned earlier, prosecutors say that one of his fundraisers told him about the whole thing in 2018. So if there's an email somewhere that says, hey, Jerry, just wanted to let you know about the illegality we were perpetrating on your behalf. Here's the deal, blah, 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 blah. That's the sort of thing that leads them to your house. So when they knock on your door and say, will you talk to us? And you say, I'm sweating bullets, but sure, come on in. I'll lie to you. I didn't know anything about it. Well, sir, the reason we're here is there's this email that says you did. Oh, I wish you had said so beforehand. Yes, well, we were hoping to catch you in a lie. I should have talked to a lawyer. Yeah. You probably should have. So, where were we? Fortenberry told agents at the time that the donors were all disclosed and he didn't know of any foreign contributions, according to the court filing. When he was questioned again at his lawyer's office, so now he knows to have his lawyer present, prosecutors say Fortenberry falsely stated that he had not been told by individual H during 2018's call, the 2018 call, that Baclini had given individual H $30,000 in cash for his campaign and that he was not aware of any illicit donation. The DOJ said the fundraiser repeatedly and explicitly discussed an illegal foreign contribution with the congressman in 2018. MFR, you taking notes on a criminal conspiracy? Yes, I am. May I see your notes? I have nothing to hide. Okay. By the way, you now have nothing to hide. You had something that you should have hidden, but now I have it. And now you have nothing to hide. Now that statement is correct. Well stated, sir. All right. Fortenberry in Tuesday's video vowed to, quote, fight these charges. And he will. The Republican weeks earlier... Oh, I see. Fortenberry, weeks earlier, used his legal troubles to raise money for a legal defense fund, according to Axios. Biden's FBI, Biden's FBI is using its unlimited power to prosecute me on a bogus charge, the fundraising page said before it was taken down. Axios reported that Fortenberry's campaign paid a white-collar criminal defense firm $25,000 in June. And it's a common claim, and sometimes there's even some reality to it, like you're in legal trouble, right? The FBI is knocking at your door. It's within bounds, initially on the face of it to say the FBI is targeting me, and they are using their unlimited power, which isn't really unlimited, to prosecute me on a bogus charge, which turns out not to be bogus, but allegedly it appears not to be bogus anyhow. But I guess let me ask you this, Mr. and Mrs. America and Canada and other places where you might be listening. Lebanon, Nigeria, for all I know. Who thinks that the FBI, the agents, any agents, get up in the morning and go, goddamn MF and Fortenberry, son of a bitch. I cannot wait to get my hands on that Jeff effing Fortenberry. He's ruining America. I'm just curious what would make like a Fortenberry supporter. I mean, they know who he is, I guess. So maybe it works among his base, such as it is in Nebraska. Oh, Congressman Fortenberry? He's famous. Everybody knows Congressman Fortenberry. Nobody knows Congressman Fortenberry. You know him because he's your congressman. That's amazing, by the way, because not everybody knows their congressman. So I guess, it could work for them. Oh, the FBI, Biden's FBI, they're going after all the Republicans, and this is our local one. But they're not going after all the Republicans. I wish they were going after all the Republicans. They're going after Jeff Fortenberry because his fundraiser sends him emails saying, subject, illegal contribution from Nigeria. So, whatever. I mean, there's no conspiracy to take down Jeff Fortenberry. Why, he's the ranking member on the Agriculture Appropriations Subcommittee. We got to get him. Think about what's going on down there. All right. Fortenberry and his wife said in a written statement, in addition to the video, that they are, quote, at every step there's just some typos here. Fortenberry and his wife said in a written statement that, quote, at every step, the agents and prosecutors assured and reassured them that he was not the target of the investigation, but was in fact a victim of that crime, which they may very well have said. Do I need a lawyer? No. You're not a target. You're the victim of a crime as far as we're concerned. Wink, wink. Okay, then I won't call my lawyer. Don't listen to them. If they even said that, which I don't know whether they did or not. They're not supposed to tell. When you're the target of an investigation, they are supposed to tell you that. But you might not have been the target at the time. I'm sure that Shaguri and Baclini were the targets. And then maybe the guy who says, Dear Jeff, let me tell you about your illegal contributions. That guy might have been the target. But then, whatever. All right. We're shocked. We're stunned. I feel so personally betrayed. I thought we were trying to help, Fortenberry said in the video. To be accused of this is extremely painful, and we are suffering greatly. What you're suffering from is not watching enough crime dramas on TV. It's unclear whether the whole thing is unclear. F the rest of this story. All right. No, there's one more paragraph. I'm stumbling over it. And I'm excited to get to the end of it, though, because I see what's coming. It's unclear which other candidates, dun, 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 which other candidates received illegal donations from Chaguri. Politico has reported that donations linked to the billionaire, he's got a lot of money to give away, matched those to Mitt Romney's 2012 presidential campaign, along with congressional campaigns of Representative Darrell Issa of California and former Representative Lee Terry, also of Nebraska, those low population states like Nebraska. California, not so much, but Darrell Issa, easily corruptible. Let's talk to that guy with money. All right, so I thought that was an interesting update on the story and a good way to get the Fortenberry story on record and make fun of Trump at the same time. So we've accomplished all of those objectives. And time for us to move on. Let's see. Oh, it's getting late. It's getting towards the next break. So we got a big, long piece on executive privilege from Lawfare, which we could save for the next segment. Although I'm not entirely convinced we're going to do it because we did, I think we kind of, in our story about congressional subpoena power yesterday, kind of, I don't know, maybe we exhausted the topic. This is a different angle on the topic, though, because of the executive privilege thing. Although, I don't know how many ways there are to say, F no, you can't have executive privilege. There's at least one, though, and it's from Lawfare, and, they do it long and detailed, like, F no, you can't use executive privilege. And we're into that. Again, though, I was proud of myself for the way of expressing to those who might not have listened to the podcast how we covered the congressional subpoena process and contempt of Congress and inherent contempt yesterday, tweeting it out. We explained the living bleep out of the contempt process as no one else could. We have 15 years of experience of explaining the living bleep out of that, and so we did so yesterday, and with great pride, and I hope it was entertaining. As entertaining for you yesterday to hear as it was for me today to describe what was going on with Fortenberry's stupid crimes and pictures of pigs defecating on their own scrotums. Well, very interesting. What a morning! I didn't think this would happen. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, the same guy who was just talking to you a second ago. Our Patreon subscription drive is still going strong, with over 175 monthly donors who help keep us on the air. If we've helped keep you going during the pandemic, why not return the favor and help us keep going so we can all be together for the next disaster? Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it easy to make secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. Maybe you'd like to thank us for keeping you sane during the Trump era. Maybe you're looking forward to in-depth explanations of what's going on in the Biden administration. Whatever it is that keeps you listening, we need your help to keep bringing it to you. And hey, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running with those options too. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We literally could not do this without you. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. There's too many things I got to get to, and we're going to race to get through as many of them as possible. But we do have a show tomorrow as well to pack full of these things. But you know how this goes. I'm going to fall behind on something. I want to refer you to, and I will include in the roundup. I'll state it now so that it has a place in the roundup. There is an opensecrets.org write-up of the Gilbert Chagoury scheme, with a nice picture of him. Very foreign looking. I mean, I don't know. Nattily dressed. It's very nice. Looks Lebanese. Less Nigerian, I guess, looking typically, maybe, than Lebanese. But I don't want to assume anything about race here. It would be foolish to do so, and unnecessary. At any rate, but he's very nattily dressed and looks a little Euro there, so that's cool. Anyway, a long write-up with more detail. A lot of the detail is the same, but they get very granular with it. And I recommend, if you're very interested in the story and going beyond my joking about it, for instance, they have it broken down with like a flow chart of the number of different straw donors that they used to donate money to the 4 identified campaigns. I guess the Justice Department release didn't name the candidates that got all the money, but it was very easy, given the specificity of the contributions made and the timing. They were able to search the databases and figure out who it was that was getting this money. So it's very interesting and lots more detail. And, if I commit to reading it off the air, will you? All right. I mean, you don't have to. And chances are I'm not going to. If you want to know the truth. But if I say I am, and that causes you to do it, that's a win-win in my book. I don't waste time doing it. You're smarter for knowing it. What could be better? Okay. Moving on. There's a couple of things. I don't know if I'm going to do the lawfare one or not. I'm going to skip it for now and get to a couple of others. Some which are sort of fun and feel good because we're talking about insurrectionists who are in trouble and getting arrested and admitting that they effed up horribly. And I'm enjoying those stories. So very quickly from the Channel 9 affiliate, CBS affiliate here in Washington area, WUSA. USA! I love it. Here's their report on this one particular guy. Ready for this headline? Misled by an amoral and untruthful president. And amoral makes me want to say, like, differ. Misled by an a-hole, untruthful president. But he said amoral and untruthful president. That's a nice quote. This is the quote of an Army veteran who says Trump betrayed him in a plea for probation. We're speaking here, the subheader tells us, of retired Lieutenant Colonel Leonard Gruppo, or Gruppo, I don't know what he says, Gruppo, G-R-U-P-P-O. Well, he's asking a judge to sentence him to probation only for his role in the January 6th Capitol riot. Let's read a little bit about what he did and decide whether that's a fair sentence. But more important than a fair sentence, honestly, what's more important than that? What's more important than that is the funny sentence, or what's, I guess, for us, a funny sentence, that he's admitting that he was misled by an amoral and untruthful president. That's Trump in this situation here. So here's the story, real quick. A nearly 30-year U.S. Army veteran said Wednesday he shouldn't get jail time for his role in the Capitol riot, arguing he was, quote, misled by former President Donald Trump. In a memo filed ahead of his sentencing on October 29th, retired Lieutenant Colonel Leonard Gruppo of Lubbock, Texas, or I guess if we're mispronouncing Gruppo and he's just Gruppo, Lubbock, Texas, but we know it's Lubbock, said he regrets putting his trust in an, quote, amoral and untruthful president. Well, good. That's nice. I'm glad he regrets that. He wanted to support the President of the United States, Gruppo's attorney, Daniel R. Lindsay, wrote. It was in his blood, in his training for 28 years in the military. After all, if you cannot trust your president, who can you trust? It's a good question. It's sad that we've gotten to that point. But remember that this president we're talking about was Donald Trump. And I guess the rest of the world just didn't know him as well as New York area people did. But, gosh, I'm sorry. I mean, effing duh. It was pretty obvious during the campaign, even if that was your first exposure to him. And it was pretty obvious throughout the 4 years of his term in office, even if that was your first exposure to him. But if January 6th was the first time you realized this guy is amoral and amoral and untruthful, then one, duh on you, and two, how did you get to Lieutenant Colonel, for crying out loud? Well, that's on us. Anyway, in August, Gruppo pleaded guilty to one misdemeanor count of parading, demonstrating, or picketing in a Capitol building. He told investigators he and his longtime friend Kenneth Kelly, who also pleaded guilty in September, traveled to D.C. on January 6th to hear Trump speak at the, quote, Stop the Steal rally, which was really a Start the Steal, and then traveled with other supporters of the former president to the U.S. Capitol after Lindsay said he heard Trump say he was going to join the crowd there. Lindsay is the attorney, right? That's it. Unfortunately, Mr. Gruppo believed these falsehoods, Lindsay said. There's an embedded tweet here about it from Jordan Fisher. But whatever. Let's just read the thing here. Once there, despite hearing flashbangs and witnessing a group of rioters scaling an outer wall, Gruppo and Kelly entered the building through a door that had been kicked in 45 minutes prior. So it's not that he was necessarily a frontline fighter or anything, but he did enter the Capitol. And, 45 minutes after the thing was kicked in, he wasn't part of the violence that pushed the door in. But on the other hand, it's like, well, I see people climbing the walls. There's flashbang grenades going on here. I probably shouldn't go in. It's been kicked in, but what am I doing here? But in he went. Kelly was arrested in April, and Gruppo self-surrendered to authorities 2 months later at his friend's urging. So that's good. Gruppo faces a maximum of 6 months behind bars on the parading charge, but last week the DOJ asked the judge to sentence him to 30 days in jail. Other Capitol riot defendants who've pleaded to the same charge as Gruppo have received a range of sentences. Anna Morgan Lloyd, an Indiana grandmother who was the first defendant sentenced in the case, was given 3 years of probation. More recently, 5 defendants, including Air Force veteran Derek Jankart, were sentenced to 45 days in jail for the parading charge. In its sentencing memo, the DOJ said Gruppo's many years of military service exacerbate his participation in the riot. And they're right. Instead of upholding his military oath to support and defend the Constitution, Gruppo disgraced himself and his country by participating in a riot that sought to undermine one of the most fundamental and cherished tenets of our democracy, the peaceful transition of power. Prosecutors wrote, his 28 years of prior military service renders his participation in the riot more egregious. I think I agree. DOJ said Gruppo also deleted evidence from his phone to try to hide his participation on January 6th, and that his remorse for the event didn't come until more than 4 months later, when Kelly urged him to turn himself in. In addition to the sentencing memo, Gruppo wrote a letter himself to D.C. District Court Chief Judge Beryl Howell, expressing his remorse and saying he takes full responsibility for my actions. I have served my country in 4 wars, Gruppo wrote. I have put my life on the line countless times for my country in those wars and many other deployments with special forces and other elite units. I should have known better, but somehow I did not. And I have already paid a very heavy price for that lapse in judgment. What was it? I don't know. Gruppo also said in his letter that he sat for a voluntary interview with the January 6th Select Committee. The committee has interviewed a number of witnesses, including former acting U.S. Deputy Attorney General Richard Donahue, but their names have largely not been released. Gruppo is scheduled to appear in person before Howell on October 29th to be sentenced just before Halloween. So you can go as a prisoner for Halloween. Well, actually, you can't go at all, but maybe you'll get probation. You can go out trick-or-treating as a probationer. It might not be the worst thing in the world to let him get away without having his 30 days in jail. There's a symbolic value to it, certainly. Anyway, I just brought it up mostly because, it was forcing these people at last to confront the truth of their participation and what it really means to have allowed themselves to be fooled into doing this. I mean, I'm sure at the time he was totally convinced and he thought maybe I am fulfilling my oath because the president is the president and he says the Constitution is being undermined by these people and I should go attack them. And if I were still active duty military and he deployed the military saying that something was a threat, I guess we'd have to go. Even though, it might not be a threat and the whole thing could be a lie. We'll find out afterwards. But I don't know. It seems like he could be and should be more outspoken. But his lawyer's probably saying, let's just play it cool here. There's only 30 days in jail on the line. We might be able to get out of all of it. Anyway, I just thought that was an interesting story. I wanted to share it with you. There are more to hit upon. And, maybe we'll save that long one for maybe tomorrow, maybe not. I don't know. And hit a couple of other interesting ones. I saw this tweet, which led me to this interesting article, which is an interesting premise all by itself. Philip Bladen tweeting this one. Just one of the many fans of our Twitter account. I don't know if he listens to the show or not. Phil, are you listening? Can I call you Phil? But I appreciated your picking up on this one and tagging me on this so that I could see it. Here's his tweet summarizing the article. Florida worker applied to 60 entry-level jobs, got 1 interview. Okay, that's not so unusual necessarily, except, the employment situation these days. But he points out that in his effort here, he targeted businesses who've been complaining about not being able to find workers, right? So kind of an expose here. In businessinsider.com, a worker in Florida applied to 60 entry-level jobs in September and got 1 interview, writes Dominic Reuter. He should be working at Reuters, I wonder. If there's any relation. Do we read the whole thing? I mean, it seems like a kind of a fascinating topic. Rather than reading the bullet points, Joey Holz, Holz, maybe, I don't know whether he goes Holtz and adds a T sound in that. I'd recommend it, quite honestly, because Holz, well, I wouldn't want to go to junior high school with that name, but he did. He's fine. Joey Holz first, sorry, Joe, recalled first hearing complaints about a labor shortage last year when he called to donate convalescent plasma at a clinic near Fort Myers, Florida. Okay, interesting. So convalescent plasma, so that means he's one of the people who got COVID early-ish. When was this? Last year. So, okay, he had COVID, so he was going to donate his plasma in the hopes that that was going to help people who contracted COVID and give them some antibodies, I guess, or antigens, or if that's not the same thing. I don't know. Anyway, that stuff doesn't really work all that well, as it turns out, but it was a good try. The guy went on this rant while he's there, I guess, about how he can't find help and he can't keep anybody in his medical facility because they all quit over the stimulus checks, Holes told Insider. And I'm like, your medical professionals quit over $1,200 checks? That's weird. I mean, what made them quit was, I'm collecting convalescent plasma for people who've got or recently had COVID. I can get COVID this way. There's no vaccine yet, so I'm kind of out of here. Over the next several months, the 37-year-old watched as a growing chorus of businesses said they couldn't find anyone to hire because of government stimulus money. It was so ubiquitous that he joined a No One Wants to Work Facebook group where users made memes deriding frustrated employers. Oh, interesting. So I thought he might have joined a group of people complaining no one wants to work, but it sounds like he joined a group of people making fun of the people complaining that no one wants to work because there's so many more obvious explanations for why people don't work, like pandemic disease that kills people could be a reason. Anyway, he said he found it hard to believe that government money was keeping people out of the labor force, especially when the end of expanded federal unemployment benefits did not seem to trigger a surge in employment. All expanded benefits ended in September, but 26 states, including Florida, ended them early in June and July. If this extra money that everyone's supposedly living off of stopped in June and now it's September, obviously that's not what's stopping them, he said. Workers have said companies struggling to hire aren't offering competitive pay and benefits. So Holes, a former food service worker and charter boat crewman, decided to run an experiment. On September 1st, he sent job applications to a pair of restaurants that had been particularly public about their staffing challenges. Then he widened the test and spent the remainder of the month applying to jobs, mostly at employers vocal about the lack of workers, and tracking his journey in a spreadsheet. 2 weeks and 28 applications later, he had just 9 email responses, 1 follow-up phone call, and 1 interview with a construction company that advertised a full-time job focused on site cleanup, paying $10 an hour. But Holes said the construction company instead tried to offer Florida's minimum wage, $8.65, to start, even though the wage was scheduled to increase to $10 an hour on September 30th. I guess the minimum wage by statute, right? So there's in a couple of weeks it's going to be $10 an hour, but you're getting $8.65 until then. He added that it wanted full-time availability while scheduling only part-time work until Holes gained seniority. Holes said he wasn't applying for any roles he didn't qualify for. Some jobs wanted a high school diploma, he said, and some wanted retail experience. Most of them either said willing to train or minimum experience, and none of them were over $12 an hour. He said, I didn't apply for anything that required a degree. I didn't apply for anything that said I must have 6 months experience in this thing. Holes isn't alone. Others have also spoken out about their troubles finding work despite the seemingly tight labor market. In a Facebook post on September 29th, which went viral on Twitter and Reddit as well, Holes said, 58 applications. Says, y'all aren't desperate for workers. You just miss your slaves. This guy's got it together. My opinion is that this is a familiar story to many, he added. By the end of September, Holes had sent out 60 applications, received 16 email responses, 4 follow-up phone calls, and that 1 solitary interview. He shared a pie chart showing his results. Oh, graphics. Very nice. Holes acknowledged that his results may not be representative of the larger labor challenges in the country, since his search was local and targeted the most vocal critics of stimulus spending. He added that despite the claims of some businesses struggling to hire, his boss had no staffing issues during the pandemic. Nobody leaves those positions because he takes care of his people, Holes said, referring to his boss. Okay. And, well, very interesting. Well done and a well-conceived experiment, and really puts a fine point on things. Well, a lot of manufactured controversy out there. Speaking of which, I guess now I have some idea about what I might want to discuss with you during tomorrow's show so that we have time to give it the due it deserves, maybe along with the lawfare piece, which is pretty long. Let's see, what other things that I have to share with you? Yes, there was this very interesting Twitter thread, which I saw tweeted around with lots of, by a lot of people, making the same note. Very interesting insights here. This is a good on-the-ground reporting, I guess, here. I guess biased reporting, I guess we'll say, now that I've figured this out. But, okay, here's the deal. I'll read you the first tweet. Last night, Flexport brought a taco truck to the port of Long Beach, right, in California, one of those busy ports where they can't seem to get the damn containers out of there fast enough, right? So he's, last night, Flexport, whoever that is, brought a taco truck to the port of Long Beach as a big thank you to the ILWU workers, International Longshoremen or Longshoremen's Workers Union. I don't know whether the W is workers, but it's the Longshoremen's Union, the people who unload the ships and load. Anyway, it was a big thank you. They brought a taco truck in there where the ILWU laborers are working like crazy to clear this container backlog. A thread on what we learned. Now, I say it's biased reporting because it was very insidery stuff and very interesting, but I now look at the name on the tweet. The account is Ryan Peterson, who identifies in his profile as the CEO of Flexport. So now you know like where that's coming from. I mean, I guess this thing still happened. There are pictures. I mean, they did bring a taco truck. Was it as well received as the CEO of the group that brought the taco truck in says? That I don't know. But anyway, some other interesting observations about what was going on. He says, first off, they told us that Flexport is the first outside company in the history of the port to send in a food truck as a sign of gratitude. They loved it. And that may very well be true. It may very well be false for all I know. But the CEO of Flexport wants you to know that they said it was the first one. And that could be true. I mean, that's an unconventional way of thanking laborers. I mean, like, more money is a good way also of thanking workers and laborers. But a taco truck is a nice one. By the way, I looked up Flexport. I'll read you the Wikipedia on Flexport. Flexport's is a freight forwarding and customs brokerage company based in San Francisco. Their software integrates and connects ERP data. I don't know what that is. Enterprise resource planning. It integrates and connects ERP data from various companies involved in a supply chain, which allows them to manage information about cargo and streamline freight processing. So he's very clearly caught up in trying to clear the backlog and get things back on track in the major ports in the country. So that maybe tells us something. Anyway, so first off, they were really happy. So this company with the software brings in taco trucks. Hooray. During our evening at the port, only one truck showed up. This is where it gets interesting. The 24/7 gates, remember that President Biden said we're going to, I don't know, whatever the hell it was, however he did it, whatever mechanism he used, he said, we're going to start operating the port of Los Angeles and Long Beach 24/7 to get this backlog out of here. Right, but the 24/7 gates don't matter if nobody comes to pick up the containers. There's a big opportunity here, he says, for companies that can operate their receiving facilities at night and send trucks to the port when there's no line. Very good point. Like, you can go in the middle of the night and get in, get out. You go during the day, you know, you got to sit there and wait and burn fuel, like literally burn your fuel and burn your time waiting to get in there to get the load or drop off your load, whatever the hell you're there for. For all of second shift, they are seeing 50 trucks or less on most nights. Trucks aren't even coming in after midnight. They have had nights with 0 trucks. Despite that, appointments are, quote, full. They have so many no-shows that they don't know how to plan the yard. Now, I'm not hip to the lingo here, but I think what they're saying here is they must have some sort of online schedule. You're a trucker, you can come to pick up a load, you schedule an appointment. So they're scheduling things so that they can, keep the place manageable. You don't just show up and say, give me this random container. There has to be some sort of planning. So you make an appointment to come, but they've booked all their appointments, but then people just don't show. And I don't know what they do about that. Like if that happens with me at the doctor's office, you get charged. I don't know whether they do that with the trucking companies or not, but I guess not. But anyway, they have so many no-shows, they don't know how to plan the yard because you plan for certain pickups and you put them out in an accessible place and then the people don't show and then somebody else shows and their container is back there. It's not staged and ready to go because somebody else told you they were going to come here. You put their container in that slot. I can understand that much. No pulls means a full yard. I guess here we're talking about no pulls. No containers leaving on trucks like they're supposed to means you end up overloaded. Between dwelling imports, still waiting to be trucked out, and empty containers, there's no room to place new containers in the yard. A ship, they would normally work with 4 to 6 cranes. They have 2 on. So normally if you're moving your containers quickly enough, you got 4 to 6 cranes working on one of those big container ships to unload it as quickly as possible. They're purposefully slowing down because there's nowhere to put the damn things anyway, which also means that 2 crane operators aren't working. Anyway, those 2 cranes that they are working with are still pumping 30 plus containers an hour, but they can't push more because the containers have nowhere to go. They are loading empties out. That isn't a restriction. But with only 2 cranes, they run out of time and they have to cut the ship loose. I guess you only get a certain amount of time in a berth before they say, I couldn't get you unloaded. Get out of here, though. Rail has caught up. I never even thought of that one. Rail has caught up. They have almost no rail containers left waiting to go out. This is a huge win and freed up additional yard space, which quickly filled. Equipment is an issue. The one spot they are truly short labor is on maintenance. Spare parts are in short supply. So even if they did ramp into full ops, they would struggle with yard equipment. But there are chassis. Interesting. Okay. I'm not certain I'm clear on everything here. A lot of them are dedicated to one carrier, but they do have chassis. The problem, though, is as they issue them out and as they break, there is no way to fix them. Those chassis are for an on-wheels premium service. This is beginning to become to me, but I get the idea that logistics, fascinating stuff, and there's a million breaking points, a million bottlenecks in places where things break down. Those chassis are for an on-wheels premium service, but they can't put the containers onto the chassis because they have nowhere to park the chassis. There are not they are not intentionally slow working. COVID is not an issue. There is no intentional labor slowdown. They want more shifts. They want to work. But also, even if they went to 24/7 operations, it would just look like more of the above. They don't have enough skilled labor and management to work full out 24/7. How long would it take to get there? A year or more. Less working, after all, means fewer training opportunities. Quick to note that they blame no one. Really, they don't. They find it all very interesting, but at the end of the day, they clock in, do their jobs, and go home to their families. They truly love the work, and they're proud of what they're doing. Big shout out, he says here, to the Flexport LA team that pulled this Taco Tuesday together and approached the workers with such empathy that we got this very clear picture of life on the ground right now. It's so easy to point fingers in the midst of a crisis. Super important that we continue to gather the best real-time insights by observing them. Put that information in context with the right people who need to know. Orient, it then says, observe, orient, decide, OOD, right? Make decisions and take decisive action, OODA, I guess there's the act. By iterating through this OODA loop. Okay, that's biz speak, but okay, we get the idea. With incredible velocity, not just speed, but speed in the right direction. He's a physicist as well. Flexport can work with the entire supply chain ecosystem to fight through the friction that is making the seemingly easy feel impossible right now. It's a very exciting time when you're working in supply chain. The pressure is on. Time for us all to step up. And I guess have tacos too. So a little advertisement for Flexport and all of that. But I think very interesting and important observations and great insight into what things are like on the ground there and why just saying, well, we'll just run the port 24/7. Yeah, great. What am I going to do with these containers? I have no room to put them down. I've taken them off the ship. There's nowhere to put them. 24/7, 48, 155,000, whatever number we want to put on it. If I can't put the effing container on the ground, what good is working 24/7? Well, how do we get some room in here? Well, we got to get some goddamn trucks in here to pull this stuff out. They're not showing up. So, I guess I wasn't expecting that. But okay, I wasn't expecting any of the things that we had on today's show. Perhaps you're not expecting what's coming next with Justice Putnam on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Perhaps I can't find it because I'm clicking the wrong buttons. All right, for whatever reason, here we go. Here's my chat. Okay, after the break, this little announcement, now I can squeeze in some more information about what you're not expecting.
From networksradio.com. You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
How about this? Conspiracy-spreading GOP candidates running for elected office in Arizona have a strategist afraid for the party's future. The Army has begun hiring more agents and support staff for its criminal investigations after a string of murders and other crimes at Fort Hood, Texas. This still continues. We've been concerned about this for a long time.